What's going on, guys? Welcome to this Python tutorial series number 5, and today we're going to be talking about modules and user-defined functions in Python. So without further ado, let's just start. Okay, so let's talk about user-defined functions first. Now, when we talk about this, from the word user-defined, it is us, the programmers, who create or define these functions before using it. Okay, so and a function is just a block of code that performs a specific task. Okay, now when we talk about block of code, these are just the sets of instructions that we can tell our function. Okay, now why do we use a user-defined function in the first place? Well, these are set of instructions that you want to use repeatedly, so we won't be hard coding everything in our program. Okay, so to create a user-defined function, you use the keyword def. This is short for define or definition. Okay, and then after that, you create your own function name. Now, let's just say I'm going to print hello in the terminal for now. So I'm just going to name this function as hello, and we add open and close parentheses. So this is essential for every functions in Python because you can actually pass data inside this. And it is also known as parameters. All right, and I'm just going to leave this blank for now, but I'm going to talk about this later on. So we add colon here and then an indentation because here we are going to actually set the instructions for this function now. So every time you create user-defined functions, you want to always return a value. Okay, otherwise it's going to be a void. Okay, so you use or you do that by using the keyword return. Okay, now what do we want to return? We just want to return the print hello in the terminal. So now we defined our function and it's not yet activated, so we need to call this function in our code. So we do that by just typing the function name and the open and close parentheses for the parameters. And if you run this, actually, you're going to have the print hello in the terminal because we returned this expression here. So that is basically how you create a simple user-defined function. Now, let's talk about the parameters of this function. Now, let's just say I want to have the sum of two numbers, and I want my users to input their own two numbers for me to solve the sum of it. Okay, now we're going to just create two variables for the number 1 and the number 2. So let's say int and then input, and we're going to prompt first number. If you don't know the input function yet, you should go back to my previous video. I talked about the input function there. So the second number is going to be the second number here. All right, now we already have two variables that the users will input. Now we need to pass these data through the function and basically solve their sum. So how are we going to do that? We need to pass through these num1 and num2 through this definition. Okay, now we do this by creating the parameters first. Now we're just creating the parameters, so you can actually call this whatever you like. For example, number 1 and then number 2. Okay, and in here you can pass these variables that corresponds to this parameters here. Okay, so we have num2, so you can actually treat this as the parameters and these are the arguments. Okay, so here we're going to just create a variable for the sum. We don't want to use the sum variable name because that is a built-in function. So we're just going to call this sum1, and then we want to use this first parameter, num1 plus number 2. So now we have the result of the num1 and num2 as the variable sum1. So the only thing that is left for us to do is to return this value. So if we return that, and then we're not going to run this yet because we just returned the value. We're not yet printing it out. So let's use the print function for this. And then if you use that, put this 50, 50, and then we're going to have 100. And that is basically how you use parameters and arguments in a function. Now, to just further explain or give you the advantage of using a function, let's just say I have two people that will be participating in inputting two numbers. So let's say this is Brad and this is John. Okay. Now it's going to be num1 as well, but it's going to be the second person that will input here. So we have number 1, first number, and num2 as 2, and basically this is the second number. Okay, so now as you can see here, we actually have two people now, and if we basically do or create this algorithm, we are going to create two algorithms for these two people, and that's very tiring, right? So we want to just use this function, and we just want to use this repeatedly. All right, I'm going to change this to sum of 2 so that we will have the same topic for this variable or for this algorithm. So we kind of just do this by creating or using the function again, but in this time we're just going to pass what John will input. So num1 2 and num2 2, and that is how you basically use functions. So for example, we have 50 and then 60 and then 20 and then 30. So now you're going to have the 50 plus 60, that's going to be 110 as the sum. 20, 30, it's going to be 50 as the sum. So basically that is very powerful, and you can actually use this infinitely. So it's really all up to you. Now let's talk about the exceptions of the functions here. Now in C++ or C, we actually have what we call voids. Okay. Now voids does not have a return value. It does not return anything, and you can actually use or do this in Python as well. So let's just say this is a main function, and you kind of just do this by calling this main and just create whatever you like in here. So for example, you want to print hello in the terminal. So if you create this and run this, you're going to be able to see the print hello, because you kind of just define this, and that's going to be just this instruction. And then if you call this, it's going to run, and voila, you have the print hello. And it is called a void because you're not really returning something. It's just doing its job inside your function. Okay? So that's basically it. Okay. So now that you've understood the user-defined functions, let's go and proceed to the modules. Now, the modules are connected to the user-defined functions, and I'm going to explain that later on. Okay, so now let's just talk about the modules first. Now, in Python, we actually have a Python library. Okay? Now, in physical world, this is basically a library as well. And we have modules in Python, and in physical world, this is actually the books in the library. All right? And inside books, there's basically topics, right? And those topics are actually the functions. Okay? Topics in such a way that it has like an algorithm in it. For example, a formula that will solve the area of a circle. So that is how functions are similar to the topics here in the books. So now I just want to point out that we already talked about the input, the built-in functions in Python, right? So I'm just going to tell you the difference between the built-in functions and the user-defined functions, because actually all the functions in Python is stored inside a module. Okay. Now we actually defined earlier. We actually defined this hello to return the print hello, right? Now this py file. This is called 5.py file, and you can actually think of this as a module already, because we defined something, and remember, a function is inside a book or a module. So in this sense, even if we actually just have one function, this is already a module. Okay, and we can actually use this in another py file, and let me just show you how to do that. So we're going to create a new file here. So let's just say this is the main file, right? Now you basically import a module first before you use it. Okay, that is the standard of a module. So you do this by using the keyword import. Okay, now you want to import this 5 module, so you just going to call the module 5py. Now it doesn't do anything because this is a number, so I'm going to rename this first. So let's just say 5. Okay, now import 5. So now this is already a module. So as you can see, so to be able to use this function, we add dot, okay, after this module. So let's say now we're going to return this. So let's say we have hello as a variable, and then 5 dot. We're going to use this function. This is inside this. So hello, and if we print, or we actually do this or run this already, we are going to have hello world. So as you can see here, we made this py file a module already, and that's basically module works in Python. So here in built-in functions, we already talked about the print function, the input function, the str for casting, int, and float. So as you can see here, we did not define this in the first place, but how can we, or why can we use these functions in the first place? It's because it is already embedded in the Python programming language. That's why we call this built-in functions. Okay, but really, we can actually import the modules of this, and let's see what are the implementations in there. So let's do that. We have import a built-in, so it is actually inside this built-in's py file. Okay, so we call this a module. Okay, now if you are using a PyCharm, you can do this, or you can go to this implementation very fast. You just click right click, and then you find the go-to, and then implementations, and if you click this, you're gonna go to the built-ins.py, and you can see all the built-in functions in Python here. So as you can see here, as I said, you have def, and sometimes there is no return. So we have the hash and something like that. So let's find the input. So as you can see here, we have the input, and there is a parameter, the args, the quargs. I'm not going to be explaining those here for now, because this is more advanced. Okay, now I'm just telling that all the modules are just bunch of functions inside of them. So we have the max, we have the min, and let's find the print. Okay, now as you can see here, we have this, and it is true that the parameters here are all of these, but we kind of just use this as self. Okay, that is very normal for the print function. And there's a lot of built-in functions here that we can use actually. And there's some of classes. I'm not gonna be able to tackle these things here, but I'm just telling you that these are the functions or the module built-ins, and inside the built-in module, there's just a bunch of functions. So that is just how you actually use module in Python. Now, I'm just going to show you how to actually utilize module in a more efficient way. So there's actually the most popular module we call math module, and you import this by doing import math. Okay, and let's just say I want to get the pi, or yeah, I want to get the pi first. So I'm going to create a variable, and then from that module we want to call this module first, and then dot, and there's a lot of functions here. So as you can see, you use this pi to get the value of pi. So if you print this pi, so you're going to be able to see the values of pi. Okay, now for example, there's actually we can actually specify what we just want to get from this module. So you do this by changing the import math expression as from math. Okay, we're pertaining to the module from math. We are going to just import the pi, and we can actually name this as whatever we like. So by just doing as, and then we're gonna have that. And if we print the pi now, we're gonna just arrive at the same answer. And you can actually just remove this and print pi, and that's just the same as that. Okay, now you can basically, there's a lot of functions inside the math function. So if you want to let's say we have number, and we have math dot, let's square, let's just use the square root. So let's say I'm going to square root of 64. Okay, so if we print the number here, voila, you have 8. So there's a lot of modules inside Python. So you can actually download something from webs and everything. And yeah, there's a lot of modules there that you can use, and not just the math module, but for now I'm just going to give you the basic one. Okay, so all right, so that is basically the modules and user-defined functions in Python. So thank you very much for watching this, and see you guys next time in the next video.